Hello everyone, thanks for dropping by. You all know who that is. And the obvious question with all these actresses, would I date her? Not a chance. She's happily married with 3 children, maybe 4 children, with a second husband, and besides, even if she was single, I wouldn't even date her. She's 6 centimeters taller than me, and that's without wearing heels. Plus the fact, like Eva Green, she looks friendly there, but she'll be far too intimidating to me to even introduce myself, even if she was single. Her second husband, who she's had the children with, he's 6'3", so even Miller there, being tall, is partial to guys who are much taller than her. And then the 3 sixes, 6 foot tall, 6-pack, and a 6-figure salary. So I would be too scared to even approach her in a social setting if I was super rich. So that's, I thought I'd get that out of the way first. Now, as you know, 2030 is coming along, and 52% of American women are reportedly going to be single and childless. Now, there's a term for people who are aging in America called solo aging. I've never heard of that, so I had a look around to see what else I could find. And I found quite a few things. First of all, I found this, KFF Health News. Now, that lady there, that's Jerry Morrington. She's 78. That means she was born in 1946, right after World War II, when the American economy really got going and the good times come to the United States. This article was written by a woman, naturally, and it was on 17th of September 2024. Now, Jerry there, she first married, she was divorced. Her second husband, who she remarried for 30 years, he's gone, and she had a 5-year relationship, and that went belly up in 2006, and she's been on her own ever since. She lives in a apartment building for seniors on the southern part of the city of Chicago. She's also got a daughter who lives in that city, so she's a mother, and she passed on her genes to the next generation. Now, Jerry there is part of 16 million Americans who are living on their own, and this article says a slice of America's population has significant health issues. 4 in 10 seniors living alone have vision and hearing loss, difficulty caring for themselves and living independently. Problems with cognition, that means dementia is coming along, or other disabilities according to a KFF analysis in 2022. And then we have lots of articles about it. This is the article bit which was interesting. The site has highlighted that, not me. The most reliable up-to-date data about older adults who live alone comes from the USS Census Bureau. In 2023, the population survey, about 28% of American people 65 and older live by themselves, including slightly fewer than 6 million men and slightly more than 10 million women. The figure doesn't include seniors living in institutions, primarily assisted living and nursing homes. They call them over here in Britain God's waiting room. That's what the general term for a nursing home is. My dad's sister ended up in one, and seeing how it is, I would rather be dead than ending up a place like that. Anyway, it says, by contrast, 1 in 10 of Americans lived on their own in 1950. Now, majority of 80% of people who live alone after 65 are divorced or widowed, twice the rate of the normal general population. 22 census, more than 20% have income below $13,590, and the federal poverty line in America, while 27% make between $27,910, twice the poverty level. I think my 3 pensions with the conversion is around about $20,000 US. So apparently if I was living in America, I'd be below the American poverty line, but I'm not. And then more yada yada. He said, being alone is better than being in a relationship, says Janice Chavez of Denver, who said she's in her 70s. I don't ask anybody for anything. If I want to sleep late, I sleep late. If I want to stay up and watch TV, I can. Of course, if you're living on your own and you're old, you do what you want. And then, this is the only guy in this article. Leslie Shane. He lives alone in 11 by 14 foot studio apartment, wherever that is, in New York. And he's 77, a retired psychological professor. Lives in a house in North Vernon. 1,700 people there, 20 miles southwest of the state capital. He's never married and doesn't have children. He could have been a MGTOW, guarding his own wallet, going his own way. And for several years, he tried to raise the profile of solo agers along Maine, policymakers and senior organizations. And all about him in Manhattan, Lester, who never married or had children, lives by himself, another MGTOW. Oh, sorry about this, people. That's him, not Ken Elliott. On the 3rd floor building of a building without a lift. He doesn't make much money during a long career as an actor, writer and a theatre director. Of course, the entertainment industry is a not very secure profession, and he's not sure how he'll make ends meet once he stops teaching at Pace University. And he has to carry his groceries up 3 flights of stairs. I live in a ground floor flat, so I'm quite lucky for that. And then another lady, and that's that article. Now, on this topic, I found Talkspace. This was done on the May 15, 2025, the following year. Now, to this, you'll see a common theme. This navigating life as a solo ager, what you need to know. It just gives a highlight of what there is in America. Census Bureau, 27% of adults over 50 live alone and don't have adult children. That's 22.1 million Americans. Building a strong support system, advice what you need, and on and on and on and on. If you're an American, all this will be relevant to you, and it's advice for if you're getting on in years, what you could do to become a solo ager to ensure that you're all right. The home modifications, assisting senior communities, downsizing or relocating, preparing for filling solo aging experience. Solo aging is increasingly a popular choice for today's older population, but it requires intentional planning to prepare for physical and psychological disorders that affect older adults. In other words, be prepared. Guys generally are more prepared because guys have to go solo virtually all their life. And this was written by this lady. Notice the feminist nose ring there. And Harvard has got in on it. Excuse me. Solo aging, who you can rely on. As more older Americans live alone, finding connection and care pose a challenge. This was done on 1st of September last year. Again, notice it's a woman, not a guy. Dr. Emily Salmon remembers Ellen, a tiny shriveled little lady, 90, could barely hear anymore. She didn't have major health problems, but the nuances and niggling issues of aging were inexorably adding up. I have tinnitus, but then I got that when I was 21 in a nightclub, Pinocchio's in Perth, Australia, and I've just got so used to it. So the letter fact, Dr. Solomon Most, she found herself occasionally fretting about Ellen and her well-being, and she called a local senior centre to help the woman periodically. And then provocative proportions, statistics surrounding solo aging are illuminating. 8% of adults 55 and older have no biological children. That could be a tacit nod to MGTOW. Guys that never married or had children, and no spouse or partner, according to the US Census Bureau. Women living alone make up the largest proportion, 16% of non-family households, with 2030 coming along, and say 2040, 2045, that will probably increase. It says few factors are fueling this trend, longer lifespans, especially among women. People also aren't getting married as often as they used to. That could be another tacit nod towards MGTOW. And it says, beyond that, millions of older Americans who live alone don't reside anywhere near adult children or other family members such as siblings, or they have strained relationships that stop them from seeing support. 8% of solo agers have at least one living child, but are estranged from them, according to a 2003 AARP survey of nearly 1,100 solo agers. And then pros and cons about it. I'll naturally put all these links below so you can read these at your leisure. And the AARP, that stands for American Association of Retired Persons. Just thought you'd know. You should know if you didn't know. This was done on the 10th of November last year. More older adults are living alone. Is that a good thing? Depends if you're healthy and you're active. Yes. And another lady, remember, this is a lady who was 102. She lives alone in a place called Boca Raton in Florida. Never heard of it. And I want to be alone, retired travel agency, a widow for 19 years. I like my own company. Obviously her husband was an insurance plan. And her story is unique. She represents a growing trend of American of people from different backgrounds and circumstances who are aging solo. If you click on that, what does that bring up? Come on, come on. More about it. And 21% of American adults aged 50 and over, that's 24 million Americans, now live alone without a spouse or partner or anyone else under the same roof, and their numbers are growing fast. That last bit could be another tacit nod towards MGTOW and guys just not bothering to date. It says, this extraordinary upswing of living alone is unprecedented. It's not unprecedented, it was forecast. Soon as third and fourth wave feminism really kicked off, and MGTOW came in as a counter, it's what's naturally going to go up, says Eleanor Porter Colon, Professor of Sociology, Institute of Health and Aging at the University of California, San Francisco. Yeah, no surprises there. She says it's a reality check that has changed for many. It's about living their own life, following what is important to you, but our social supports have not kept up with the needs of those aging alone. And then a bit about it. Then we have a graph. Women's solo ages. You notice, always about women. Despite the number of solo ages are often misunderstood and even invisible, older adults who live alone are generally healthier, more cognitive, capable and more socially connected than the broad group of older people living with their spouse or adult children, because they have to be. That could be a tacit nod to me. And what solo ages say, and then we have freedom of information tops. Best thing about solo aging, freedom, autonomy, yeah. Independence, yeah. Control and decision, yeah. No responsibility for others, yeah. My responsibility is finished when Dad rejoined Mum. Personal space and comfort, yeah. And then lonely, well, I'm not really. Anxious, some of the time. Overwhelmed, not really, you work through that. And sad, so-so. And then more time for pals, romance, not likely. People of their own social networks, nope. And then another example, a lady called Caitlin Martin, 74, from Kannapolis, North Carolina. She's been a solo ager since the death of her husband. Another retirement plan. She had a seizure disorder and used to call 911 every time she felt a seizure coming on. That's probably like a stroke. And then handling money is a major concern. Prepare yourself. All advice and help for Americans who are heading that way as they get older. Now, Forbes has also picked up on it. November the 11th, 2025, retiring a single and paying double the hidden cost of aging alone. You notice it's another woman. What was considered a niche is now becoming the new normal. Solo aging in retirement for millions, especially women. It's a stage of life that demands more than savings. It calls for longevity, planning that covers the entire infrastructure of living well in older age. And apparently in America there's a thing called Singles Day, the world's biggest celebration for buying for one. So American shops have a Singles Day especially for people who live on their own, probably with the specials and price drops of food items. Not being an American, I've never visited there, I have no idea. And says what started is not Valentine's Day, conceived by singles on a college campus in China, now a global retail extravaganza that generates more sales than Black Friday and Amazon Prime Day combined. Never heard of Singles Day, so I'll have to look it up, see if it happens in my country. But beneath the shopping sprees, a far more significant socio-economic story. Living alone is becoming one of the fastest growing lifestyles, and one that requires more planning for retirement. Nearly 1 in 3 American households is now a single person household. That could be another tacit nod to MGTOW. People living alone face what is widely known as a single tax. The extra cost of living alone, but living alone is no longer just about paying for a solo streaming plan or fully covered rent. It also involves bearing all the visible and invisible costs of daily life into older age on your own, of course. And then we have all about it. work on single independence. Couples may divide evenly, but if they still offer something, solo agents don't. Redundancy. Planning for one-person infrastructure. Why women must prepare for a second retirement. You notice women again. Single day and solo futures. And that's Forbes. Now, this is an American advertisement article for a retirement home. You notice a woman, and then there's two women there. Flying solo plan, why solo agent is the ultimate power move in 2026. And then you tell it's about is retirement village, as the Americans call it. Longevity leap, health span versus lifespan. That lady there is, I think, is that lady. So, the ultimate guide to the renaissance of desire, why your best years of intimacy start now. But a guy like him, if he's a high-value guy, he has options, and he probably wouldn't want to go with a woman her age. That's why I bring that up. Power of slow burn connection, upgrading the mechanics, fuel for the fire, the libido boosting kitchen, 10-minute daily vitality routine, keeping the spark spontaneous. Take away sex is a pillar of wellness. But if you get older, you're just a guy just not interested in sex. More trouble than what it's worth usually. Allow this time. Now there's another Senior Services of America. Look at that lady. I think it's that one. It says living alone after 70, addressing common concerns and how to maintain an enriching life. Living alone at 70 beyond is concern for elders and loved ones. Click here to learn more about living a personal safe life within the senior years in this retirement village. This is another advertisement for it. And all things what this thing can do. That's what I've noticed about America. If you've got money in America and a decent income, you can live quite comfortably. But if you're struggling with money and you don't have a decent income, then America can be quite cold and hostile, no matter who you are. In fact, it says, according to research, more than 40% of seniors experience loneliness, and the concern is justified. And then about it, what this village can do. If you're an older guy, you've got your hobbies. Top tips for living a personal life of 70 beyond. And then all yada yada yada. And once again, you notice mostly women in the photographs. And there, let's say what they offer. Anyway, this is a senior living management and operations specialist. It's a retirement village. Avenue Suite, Gig Harbor, WA. That could be Washington State on the west coast at the top. Now, as I said, this, and this is predominantly aimed at older women with just a few token things. What was it? Not this one. This one. Him and here were just the only men in these articles that I found. The only thing specifically for men that are getting old is this from the National Library of Medicine, American Journal of Men's Health. Loneliness of men 60 years and older, the association with purpose in life. Once again, the guys are not on the radar. Mostly just old women, not old men. This is just an article about it. Findings from the research identified that older men are more at risk of social isolation when compared to women, and purpose in life was experienced when this group was reminiscent of the past, particularly in relation to previous jobs they've worked in. Well, that is a moot point. Guys have hobbies. A guy, he gets on with it if he's been used to being on his own for the bulk of his life, like me. So internet usage was measured as a single item point, 6-point frequency in a scale from never to daily. If it wasn't for the internet, I'd probably be a bit lonely, but then I usually keep myself busy. But there's lots of things for American men. Similar description of American men aged 60 to 79. I'm 70 at my next birthday, so I'd be in this lot if I was an American. The 70 to 74, 29% of American men are that age. 75 to 79, 12%. And then descent Maoris, non-Maoris, partnership, all the rest. Statistics, loneliness, less, on and on and on. All sorts of stuff. I'm on the 20 minutes now, 25, so I'll have to wrap it up. But anyway, solo aging is a thing that's happening in America, and they're more in concern with women solo aging than men, because this one, Harvard, the AARP, Forbes, and the retirement villages in America, they're more for women and not for men, because men are a disposable asset, and the American society doesn't really care much for men, because the women have resources. Not women have resources once the guy's dead, their husband, so they're seeing women as a source of income, and guys can just be forgotten about. But we've got 2030 coming along, so the number of more women dying alone and being old on their own is going to increase, but there's single women being on their own, and that's going to have a profound effect on the senior services of America, as these women, they won't have had the resources of their husbands and that to fall back on. Such is the joys of feminism. Anyway, I'm over 25 minutes now, so I'll have to wrap it up. You know the routine, people. Like, dislike, etc. It's completely up to you. So until next Monday, that's it from me. Bye-bye.